Hello, I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist, and every week or so I write a newsletter all about radio. It's called Radioland, and this is for the 25th of August 2025. In Australia, industry lobby group CRA has released a caps lock heavy release. Can you find the radio in your new car? Urgent call for legislation to ensure access to local radio. It's accompanied by a paper called The Fast Facts Keep Radio Easily Accessible Anytime, Anywhere. Good old plucky little Australia, the number 15 new vehicle market in the world, with 1.2 million sold in 2024, is looking for prominent one-button access to Australian radio, AM, FM, DAB Plus receivers and streaming audio in all cars, and also asking for the government to act now. The fact sheet also promotes streaming radio and even podcasts in the same breath as requiring AM, FM and DAB Plus reception in cars. Well, the Australian radio industry has mistakenly long ignored the work from Radio Player, which has been spending a lot of time to actively work with auto manufacturers to make the radio experience work better in cars, particularly ensuring that receivers can automatically hand over between FM, DAB and IP, and not just making sure that there's a radio button, but setting clear UX guidelines to ensure that it's easy and clear to use. The EBU is doing similar, and in my view it would be better for the CRA to work together with other global organisations here rather than treat them as not invented here, as the organisation has long done. The requirement put forward by the CRA that connected cars and devices with a terrestrial receiver continue to provide prominent access to radio broadcasting services seems to leave the door wide open for manufacturers to just remove the terrestrial receiver altogether, something that we don't really want. Better still, of course, that the public want broadcast radio enough to request it in their cars. Meanwhile, it would be churlish to mention that the CRA's implementation of DAB Plus radio in this country is not quite what car receivers expect. Neither my Toyota Prius nor my MG4 decodes the CRA-operated DAB signal correctly. The Prius can't even get the audio without glitches, while the MG struggles to decode the program type, the slideshow, or even the DLS in some cases, as well as a suspiciously long delay between tuning into a station and the audio actually coming in. The ABC SBS multiplex is fine in both, and yes, I've reported it to all the right places, but nobody seems to want to acknowledge the issue or indeed fix it. Elsewhere, catch-up radio has been quietly added to some shows on BBC Radio 4 on the international BBC website. They appear in the schedule page, so we can now listen to the Today programme, PM and other long-form news programmes which don't appear in podcast form. The schedule also seamlessly links to podcasts, so if you press play on The Archers, for example, it plays The Archers podcast, complete with ads, as it should be. However, this isn't yet available in the BBC app, where if you manage to find your way to the programme schedules, you'll not see these play buttons. 90% of all on-demand audio is listened to on mobile. And the Archers podcast, by the way, starts with a superfluous BBC Sounds promotion, which really isn't hard to get right. Thank you to George Wright, who shares Tuning In, an American's Guide to British Radio Culture, the massive difference between UK radio and that from the US, and why most US radio leaves me entirely cold. It's worth a read. You'll find it in the show notes. In Australia, Stephen Centofanti has updated his Radio Technologists resources, and there's plenty there to read. Just released from the Radio TechCon conference is Radioland supporter Rupert Brunn talking about the PIPs, the time signal that you'll hear on BBC Radio, especially BBC Radio 4 and the BBC World Service. And there's some interesting information in there, particularly that the PIPs are produced every quarter hour, and the strenuous work that went on in the BBC to ensure that they don't go out by mistake. There was a big orange light, apparently, but the big orange light didn't work. Instead, the more sensible plan was to automatically mute the PIPs channel between 5 minutes past to 55 minutes to, so that you only heard the correct ones at the top of the hour, even if you did leave the fader open. In my quest for a little travel radio that picks everything up, Radio's Stephen Martin has pointed me, well, he's Steve Martin, when he's in radio. He pointed me to an amazing looking thing, the ominously named DP666. Yes. First, it looks like an anorak stream. It's the kind of information that the screen gives you, everything from, program type to EON information and all kinds of stuff for FM RDS. Oh, it's going to be very exciting. It uses a TEF6686 chip inside it, and it's about £50. The firmware for the chip is open source, and the radio is capable of tuning in to DAB bands, but not decoding the audio. But blogs about it appear to indicate that you can also connect your computer and treat it as an SDR receiver, so who knows whether that opens up additional things to do with DAB, or you can make it available as a web tuner instead. So, of course, I now have one on the way. So thank you to Steve Martin. And next weekend, I fly to Radio Days Asia, which I'm looking forward to. I'm moderating some sessions and playing MC for the podcast day. If you are going to be in Jakarta, I would really appreciate saying hello. I'm speaking next then at Radio Days Asia in early September. I'll be at Pennine Radio's 50th birthday and last ever get-together in Bradford later on in the month. Pod Summit YYC in Calgary. The Health Podcast Summit, which I'm speaking at. I think speaking at something in the end of September in Istanbul as well. I'm just waiting for information about that. And also Radio Days Europe in Riga in Latvia next March. And thank you so much to the many supporters of Radioland, including Studio, Media Results Inc. and Brunn Audio Consulting Limited for your kind support. If you would like to support my work in any way, you can buy me a coffee, become a member to give regularly, or just give a one-off coffee, or 5. Buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland is where to go. My website has more details about who I am and what I do and whether I can help you further. That's james.cridland.net. And keep listening.